please pass the message to the participants. Dear participants, we are going to start the session exactly at 7 o'clock. It's 6:58. So within 2 minutes, we are going to start the session. Already our resource person, Sohom Majumdar, has joined the session. Okay, we can go ahead.
Start the session?
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. A very warm and good evening. It gives me great pleasure watching such a huge gathering for today's webinar titled Career Opportunities and Skills Required in Software Industry. I, Ranjit Kumar, Chief Manager, Public Relations and Consultancy on Technology and Science, at the very outset, congratulate and welcome you all for today's webinar. We are very much obliged to get an overwhelming response for the webinar from all over all the states, which proves how young aspirants like you are eagerly waiting to fulfill your thirst of making a career in software. In order to make this webinar a decent success and for smooth functioning, we have muted all your mics and also request you all to switch off your videos to avoid distractions to the speaker while delivering his keynote. Now, without making any further delay, I request Chief Executive Officer of Own Technology and Science, Mr. B. Shravan Kumar, to introduce today's resource person.
Yes. I, B. Shravan Kumar, Chief Executive Officer, OTS, welcome all the participants for today's webinar entitled Career Opportunities and Skills Required in the Software Industry. I take immense pleasure in introducing our resource person of today's webinar, Mr. Sohom Majumdar. He's a complete software person. He has completed his BTech from West Bengal University of Technology and secured 200 rank in GATE. Being CSC topper, he has finished his MTech from NIT Warangal and worked in reputed companies like Yahoo, Immobi, etc. Currently, he's working as a senior software engineer in WallmartLabs. Now, without making more delay, I invite Mr. Soham to take over the session.
Thank you, Shravan. Thanks for that very kind introduction. So I am Sohom Majumdar, and so I thought of starting a little bit about myself, even though Shravan had covered it. I did my BTech from WBUT and then did my MTech from NIT Warangal. I have spent some time at Yahoo, and then I moved to Immobi, and currently now at WallmartLabs. I've been in this industry for 6 years. So I'm going to talk to you about the skills and opportunities that we have about this industry than what I have learned in this last 6 years. So what are the challenges in the software industry if you look at as a whole? So let me compare how the world has changed from 2005 and 2020. So in 2005, when we were talking to friends, we used to have like this scratch cards and get SMS, free SMS and all that. And that is how we used to talk to friends. Today, we use Facebook, we use WhatsApp, we use Instagram. We have so much social media on hand that we use to communicate. While playing games, we used to go to a cyber cafe, take out from our home, go to cyber cafe, pay 15 rupees an hour or 20 rupees an hour, play some games, and then after an hour we have to come back home. But today we have unlimited number of games in our smartphones, and we are playing anytime we want. Like similarly, while checking my mail, again I had to go to cyber cafe. We had to pay 15-20 rupees an hour and check the mail. Today the scenario is very different. We have email, we have all sorts of email, we have Twitter, we have everything in our hand with the smartphone. Payment, for example, is another place where we used to do cash payments earlier everywhere. Right now we just scan a QR code in a Paytm or Google Pay and we pay the shopkeeper. And that's not just only for big payments. Even for 10 rupees in where I stay in Bangalore, even the Golgappe wala, the chaat wala in the street, they have also put up a Paytm or Google Pay QR code, and you can scan the Google Pay and pay him just for 10 rupees, for 15 rupees. So what do you think the challenge is in the software industry? So the biggest challenge is it's a rapidly evolving industry. In other places, a lot of industry where the innovation or the changes have happened 100 of years or 50 years earlier, and things have remained fairly constant with small changes here and there. But in the software space, if you see in the last 15 years, things have become entirely different. The paradigm has shifted multiple times in this last 15 years. What was brand new and cutting edge technology 3 years back is now nobody is using that because it has become outdated. And the change is very unpredictable. Nobody can predict what direction the change will go, what direction the industry will evolve into. So the biggest challenge is to keep yourself updated, keep yourself up to date with whatever is the current industry trend. That is the biggest challenge in software industry. So when you graduate, you have so many options. Nowadays, if you are a final year student, you graduate, you hear all these terms thrown around you. You hear machine learning, you hear cloud computing, blockchain, you hear full stack development, DevOps, app development, information security. There's so much options and you might feel confused. What to do? Where should I invest my time in? Which way can my career grow? And which way is just a dead end and is not useful for my career? We will try to give some clarity about not all of them. We cannot cover everything in one small session, but we will try to provide as much clarity as we can for each of these small blocks and bits of pieces in software industry. So these are all, if you look at this, all these terms, if you are in the software industry, you will feel like these are like the current terms. These are the things that are in, things that you see advertisements all around. Not all of them might grow into a career in the future, but some of them definitely will. So one thing I want to stress at the beginning is a lot of people have the idea that software development is basically writing code. It is not only about writing code. So if you look at this diagram, writing code or development of the software is obviously the biggest chunk, but there's so many small chunks which are scattered around it. And all of them need resources to do that. So even if you are not comfortable with writing very good code, even if you are not comfortable with a language as such. You can still choose a career in software industry in any other spheres that are there. So without further delay, I will start with the biggest chunk, which is software development. So here, the biggest thing is about writing code. So if you look at software development also, writing code is also one part of the puzzle. One part of the puzzle. If you look at it, we have to first gather the requirements. What are you building the code for? What does the stakeholders need? What does the user need? And what are you trying to achieve by writing this code? Then you need to build an approach. How do I solve this? What technologies do I use? How do I use the technology? When do I use the technology? And why do you use this technology? All these questions come in the approach building part, or which we call the software architecture part, where we build the software in paper or a whiteboard, where we build the building blocks of the software in a paper or a whiteboard, and we decide on what to use, how to use, when to use, and why to use. These are the 4 basic important questions that we ask. Then obviously comes the big chunk, which is the writing the code, writing the software. And then once the software is ready, then you test the software, then you deploy it to production and open it to users and allow them to use the software. So when talking about code, we have to talk about the languages. So these are the current trends of programming languages. If you look at it, Java has been a winner. Java has been the prominent language for many years since probably a decade. But after 2017 or mid 2018, it has slightly declined in popularity. And Python is slightly taking over the popularity. There are certain languages which are not very popular, like Golang, and this green line, which is actually Kotlin. These are languages which have come in very new, which are very new languages, very matured and modern languages. These languages are still not very popular per se, but their popularity, if you look at it, is ever growing. So this charts I've taken from this website called pypl.github.io. You can go to this website and look at different other combinations. So this is what I am summarizing. So Java and Python are still the 2 most popular languages that are being used across the industry. C, C++, and JavaScript, they are not as popular as Java and Python, and their popularity is somewhat stable nowadays, but there are specific use cases where C++ or JavaScript are paramount. You cannot write those code in Java, you cannot write those code in Python. Go and Kotlin are 2 of the most rapidly rising languages. These are possibly the languages of the future, but it's very early days to say. PHP is one language which used to have enormous popularity probably like 6 or 7 years ago, is now slowly declining, and people are not eager to start a new project with PHP. There might be legacy projects, old projects which are written in PHP, but slowly people are moving away from PHP into a modern language. And I've given a link to the website if you want to check and play around with the languages, see how much what is popular. So if you want to be a software developer, what should be your necessary skills? These are the skills that are definitely required. You have to be, the first and foremost is you have to be proficient in a language. And it depends on what kind of problem you're trying to solve. Not every developer will be able to solve every kind of problem. So if you're doing a general purpose software, you need Java or Python. And that has been, as you can see, that is the language to go for software industry now. if you're doing some data science project, you need to be good in Python or you need to be good in R. If you're doing app development for Android or iOS, you need to be good in Swift, you need to be good in Kotlin, you need to be good in JavaScript. For UI, JavaScript is still the #1 language to use. For low-level development, like if you're developing an OS or if you're working in a network company and developing network systems, you need to use C and C++. What I need, so even though I put this as a single slide, what I cannot, it's not enough to stress that how much proficient you need to be in the language. You need to be as proficient as possibly can. You should be knowing internals and outside, like all the internals of the language. You need to know even the most convoluted features and most unused features also is sometimes might be required. But at the same time, you have to be mindful of how you're developing the code, how much readable it is, how much the next person who comes after you can work on that code. So the language proficiency is probably the #1 skill that you need to be a software developer. But along with it, you need all the skills also. You need to know algorithms and data structures, because your code, even if you know all the nitty-gritties of the language, you still have to write the code, use some data structures, use some algorithms to write the code. You need to know how much the code is performant, what kind of data structure to use in what conditions, and what are your options. And another reason I focus on algorithms and data structure is, other than the coding round, most companies will conduct an interview around algorithm and data structure. So this coding and algorithm data structure, these are the two rounds that will be kind of a filter layer for companies. So if somebody is not passing the coding or algorithm data structure rounds, companies will not be eager to hire him as a software developer. Obviously, then you need your knowledge of other current trends, like what are the popular libraries, what are the frameworks, what are the software systems that are going around that people are using nowadays, like SQL, what kind of SQL databases people use now, what kind of NoSQL databases people use now, trends like Spark, Storm, Docker, Kubernetes, and then you need to know cloud also, because cloud is now the biggest feature that is that the companies are moving forward to. And you need to have basic knowledge of testing, because you cannot write a software and just leave it at that. You need to test it. You need to make sure that whatever you're trying to do, it is doing that exactly. The next part after software development comes something called quality assurance. So what does quality assurance mean? So I have a slightly a joke around it. So the difference between a developer and a quality assurance engineer. So when a developer builds a bar, he walks into the bar, he orders a beer, he happily enjoys the beer, he goes home happy. But imagine a QA engineer walking into a bar. He will order all sorts of stuff. He will order one beer, he'll order 99,000 beer, he'll order -1 beer, he'll order a lizard. And if the bar is not well developed, if the software is not well developed, what will happen? The bar will catch on fire. So what does quality assurance mean? It verifies the quality of software. What do you mean quality of the software? It means when given some input, it will give the expected output, give the expected result. When given an invalid input, like when you ask for a lizard in a bar, it should still work and show an error or point out a mistake. It should not crash. The program should not crash. Your laptop should not go blank screen like what happens with the older version of Windows. So those are and then also it has to perform under stress. Like if, for example, if Flipkart is giving a big billion sale and suddenly there's like 10 times more people who are visiting the site cannot crash, because if they're giving a sale, they should perform under that number of requests. And this cycle, the software development and quality assurance, it's a cycle. Quality assurance runs a test, then it figures out there are certain things which are not up to the quality. They send it back to the software developer saying that, these are the things that are not in quality. And software developer again fixes those points. Then they again pass it through quality assurance, and then quality assurance can find out with some other quality checks which are failing. And this goes on in a cycle until the quality assurance team says it's okay to go through and release it to the wider world, to the wider audience. So there are two types of quality assurance that most companies follow. One is a manual QA, manual testing, which is you manually create the different scenarios. If you have a UI, you manually do all the things on the UI just like a user would do, and you try to figure out different scenarios and try giving different inputs and all that. The only problem with this is it's very time consuming because you are manually doing everything, and there might be some use cases which are missed because manually, if you are trying to figure out the use cases, you might miss some use case. But one good thing about it is this does not require any programming experience because it's just working on the UI. The other side of it is automation testing, where you use some framework or some software to figure out the test scenarios and then write some small code to simulate those test scenarios and hit this and run that code. So Selenium and Cypress are two emerging popular frameworks that are there for automation testing. If you're interested, you can go and check them out. So for quality assurance engineer, the first and foremost skill will be to produce breaking scenarios which developers cannot even imagine that coming. So those are the scenarios you have to produce. So when somebody is being interviewed for QA roles, they will be given a problem and you have to come up with test cases. You have to come up with scenarios which user can do, which the developer probably will not be able to imagine also. The knowledge of programming language is obviously advantageous because companies are slowly moving towards automation testing rather than manual testing because of the different issues with manual testing. You need to know basic data structures and algorithm here also, because if you have to do programming, you need to have a knowledge of data structures and you need to have a firm grasp on what is required. So a lot of the interviews in QA interviews, a lot of the interviews happen via questioning. So the interviewee would also ask questions of the interviewer. So to understand that what is required and whether there is any gap in the requirement, whether there is anything which is undefined, which is not clearly specified in the requirement. A good QA engineer would be able to find out the gaps in the requirement and able to go back on the requirement and then clear that requirement up. There's another role which is becoming more and more important nowadays is DevOps role. So what is DevOps role? Before that, I'll show you a little bit of a clip of how a software development works. So you have the code. You have code in your files. You have Java files, you have C files or Go files, whatever files you have. You have to build them to an executable code, which user can execute on their system. And then you have to deploy those code into some server or some machine so that the other users via internet can access that. So who decides how do you build the code? Who decides how do you deploy the code? That is the job of a DevOps engineer. The build and deploy phase of the code of the software is decided by the DevOps engineer. So there is these are the 3 or 4 job description for a DevOps or service engineer. You have to ensure a smooth transition of a software from development to production. Developers develop the software, but once it releases to production, once it releases to the whole user base, then only it becomes a production environment. Then only the software company can earn money for it. Then the DevOps engineer has to ensure uptime in the production environment, which basically means this site or the software should be up and running all the time. For example, if Google goes down for even half an hour, the company will lose probably millions of dollars. Here, if the DevOps engineers are not proactive and figure out there are issues and that can affect the uptime, that can bring the site down. If they cannot proactively predict and fix them, it becomes a huge loss for the company. Generally, that loss sometimes is like in millions and billions of dollars for big companies. Even for small companies, the losses can be even less losses can be very detrimental because they might have small budgets. So ensuring uptime is probably one of the biggest challenge in DevOps. And then you have to react and fix the errors in production environment. If the uptime is breached, if the site is down, you have to react and fix the error and make sure the site is up within as less time as possible. So if the site goes down, you should bring it up within, say, like 2 minutes, within 5 minutes. It should be that fast. And how do you react? How do you catch errors? How do you react to errors? You set up the pipelines, you set up the alerts, you set up the runbooks. All this setup has to be done by the DevOps engineer. Developers and QA engineers will use these pipelines, will use these alerts and work on it, but it's the DevOps engineer's duty to set up all these pipelines, alerts, and runbooks. So there are probably current trends in CI and DevOps, which are being used by a lot of companies across the board. CI/CD is one of the most important trend that is going on, which is called continuous integration and continuous development. People use Jenkins, Travis, Circle, Ansible. These are the common CI/CD tools, which as a DevOps engineer, you should be aware of. The deployment infrastructure, there's Docker, there's Kubernetes, and there's public cloud, GCP, Azure, AWS, and alerting. For alerting, people use InfluxDB, Grafana, PagerDuty, Nagios, ServiceNow. All these are alerting mechanisms. So these are the trends in DevOps engineering. Why did I point this out is, if you're going for a DevOps engineer role, or if you're going to interview for a DevOps engineer role, these are the places where you can expect your questions, interview questions to come. So you need to be proficient in some CI/CD framework, in some deployment infrastructure, and in some alerting mechanism, without which your skill level will be definitely very low compared to your peers. And another big chunk of software development is the product and project management. So product management is dealing with what to build, when to build, and why to build. It's not anybody who comes and says, I want a software. There should be a reason to build a software. That's the product management's initiative. And then the product manager also analyzes trends and predicts what all new improvements we have to bring to this software, and then work with the stakeholders, formalize the requirements, and become a bridge between the user of the software and whoever is developing the software. Similarly, there's another role which is called project management, which deals with scheduling the software lifecycle, tracking the progress, resolving issues, and bringing all the stakeholders into a same page, holding the meetings, doing discussions, and making sure that everybody understands the requirement in the same way. So there's a slightly confusion between product and project management. People get confused. So I took a real life example. So for example, if you want to open a restaurant, what will product manager do? He will answer questions like, where will the restaurant be situated? What food should we offer? Whether do we serve alcohol or not? Do we play a Bollywood song or an English song? Whereas the project manager will look as how many days will it take to construct the restaurant? What can the chef cook? And if the product manager says there's something else that we need to offer in the food, then should we get some extra chef, hire some extra chefs? How many days to get the alcohol license before we can serve alcohol? And then if we are playing a song, is there any copyright issues? These are the things project manager will solve. I hope that this real life example makes it clear between product manager and project manager. So product management and project management are very niche roles. These are not roles that you can walk in and get very easily. There are specific courses for product management and project management which you need to enroll in. Those are probably 6-month, 1-year courses. So after graduation, you can look for those courses also. You can go through those courses. There are certifying authorities like your university, which gives you a BTech degree. There are authorities who give you a project management degree or a product management degree. Once you get those degrees, those are short-term degrees, like 6 months, 1 year, you can do and get those degrees. It will be easier with those degrees to go and apply for a project management or a product management role in any software company. So there is something called a software development life cycle. So this is how a software development life cycle looks like. First, we have the requirements. We formalize all the requirements, what the software will do, how will it do, what will it do. Then we develop the software. Then we do a quality assurance of the software. And as I said, this is a cycle. So there will be a quality assurance, then develop, then quality assurance. Finally, when it passes the QA, we will build it into a usable form, deploy it in some server, and then monitor the running of the software. So if you look at this entire life cycle, the first phase, requirements phase, is done by a product management. The develop phase is done by a software developer. Quality assurance is done by a QA engineer. The build, deploy, monitor, these 3 phases lie with the DevOps engineer. And this entire life cycle management is done by a project manager. If you look at the timelines in general, the most of the time is spent in the build, deploy, monitor phase, or rather, I would say in the monitoring phase, because a software once developed, the improvements to it are very rare. The first development might take some time. Then the subsequent developments become easier and easier slowly. So a lot of time is spent on the monitoring. So what companies really need nowadays are DevOps engineers who are good in this build, deploy, monitor phase. There is a very high degree of requirement for this roles nowadays. There's one skill which is across the board needed if you want to be there in the software industry. These are called soft skills. These are not technical skills. These are not skills that you can learn very easily. These are kind of skills that you acquire with time. One of the things is in the software industry, you have to interact with the different people. Since software is more or less a global industry, you have to, your interaction with stakeholders, peers, and superiors can be across the culture. So you might be sitting in India working for a software, but your client might be sitting in US, or your client might be in Germany, or you have to work with someone who is sitting in somewhere like Japan. You have to be very careful of the culture of the person you're talking to. Even if it is not across the world, even within India, the culture varies from state to state. The culture of Tamil Nadu versus the culture of Delhi might be very different. Similarly, the job culture of India versus the job culture of Germany is very different. Like if you're talking to a German client, you have to be very straightforward, and do not go for long sentences, do not go for any formalities and all that, straight to the point. But for Britishers, they like that formality. Without the formality, you become somewhat like a snob. With Japanese, you have to be right on time. This kind of cultural differences comes into the soft skill bucket, which you should be very aware of. The other point is be and BR, be nice and be respectful. You cannot be rude, you cannot shout at people to put your point across. There might be conflicts in your discussion, but you still have to be calm, you have to be nice, you have to be respectful of the people, but still you have to be strong enough to put your point across and make sure that your point is considered. And the other term that is used a lot of a lot of times is unlearn to relearn. The software industry is not like your college code. The code that you write in college, or the degree or the subjects that you read in college might do a stepping stone to the successful career, but that does not mean it is a equivalent of a successful career. A lot of big people have come from small town colleges, whereas I know a lot of people who are from big IITs and NITs does not have a very successful career. So if you look at somebody like Satya Nadella, he came from Manipal Institute of Technology. It's maybe fairly well known in India, but if you look at the whole world scenario, it's a very small college, but he is still leading one of the greatest companies and one of the largest companies in the world. He's the CEO. So it depends on how much you can unlearn and relearn. Some things, what you learned in college, you have to forget that, you have to remove that and relearn new stuff. So what does the future look like? So these are the 4 things which I feel is the future of the software industry. Cloud computing, more and more startups are coming, more and more small companies are coming, and large companies are also there who are moving towards cloud to save the cost. Machine learning has become one of the biggest area of development for any company. Nowadays, in any scenario, in any problem, machine learning has become the biggest investment for all companies. DevOps is another big challenge, because even if you develop a very good software, until you have a very good DevOps setup, you cannot run the software at scale. You cannot run the software for millions and billions of users at the same time. And full stack development, which is something which will never go up, which is something which will stay for a very long time, at least for now. Now we come to something of a serious topic. Right now, we are going through a very hard time due to this coronavirus and COVID-19 epidemic or pandemic, shall I say. So what has coronavirus done to the software industry? One thing is very apparent is there is a recession that is there, and economic slowdown is there, and there is a recession that is inevitable. And there are smaller companies and startups who are struggling very, very much to even finance their day-to-day operations, and even larger companies are laying off people. Larger companies like TCS and Infosys has also started laying off people or cutting their salaries. So one thing is very clear. Only the most competent engineers who are up to date with modern technology can stay back. And displaying the skills in contemporary technology is becoming important even for freshers. So if you are a fresher and you say that I do not know cloud computing, I do not know machine learning, I do not know anything of the new technologies, but I know only what I have learned in college, is becoming a very big handicap. Nowadays, a lot of these people, a lot of the graduates spend their time in other co-curricular activities outside of college and learn these skills. So these skills are becoming more and more important in the company interviews. So what can you do to upskill, and what can you do for preparation for the interviews? First is practice. Definitely practice is the number one thing you should do. You have to practice a lot of interviews. You can give mock interviews if you want, and practice speaking in front of mirror. Be aware of the strength and your weaknesses. It's not possible for a person to know everything. And as we saw, the rapid pace at which software industry is developing, it is impossible for anyone to be aware of every possible scenarios. So you should be aware, what are your strengths? What are the scenarios which you can successfully negotiate, and what are your weaknesses? Which one you cannot answer well? And you should be very straightforward in putting it forward to the interviewer that, you know, this these are the stuff which are my weaknesses. I will not be able to answer from there, but these are my strengths. For practice, you can do coding practice from gigsforgigs.com is a very good site for doing some coding practice. And there are good books also, like Cracking the Coding Interview is a very good book, which you can follow. And then while upskilling your knowledge, you can go to sites like Coursera, where you can do courses on cloud computing, you can do courses on machine learning, you can do courses on DevOps, and get your knowledge. And we at Own Science and Technology, we will also do some courses to make sure you can upskill your knowledge around that. With this, I will end my session and I will hand it over to Ranjit and Bharat. Sorry, Sharat, sir.
Thank you, Soham, for your presentation. Now, first of all, I would like to ask any participants whether you have anything or not. If you have any doubts, you can unmute yourself. You can turn on your video and you can ask the questions to Mr. Sohom Majumdar. Is there any participant? You can raise your hand. Is there any participant with any doubt? Okay. So Sai Pavan. So first of all, Sai Pavan, you can unmute yourself and you can turn on your video and you can interact with him.
Yes, I'm Sai Pawan. And I have a small doubt of this, which I have a link provided. Is this for the free of cost to learn that?
Which one? The C programming, right?
Yes, sir, the links which are provided at the last of this.
Okay. C
Is this for
programming
the free of cost for the practice?
actually, there will be some package. It is like one workshop. So very minimum charge will be there anyhow. That will be communicated in the website. It will be there in the website. If you visit our website after a few days, then you can get all the details.
Yes, sir, sure, I look.
Okay. Right. If any participant has any question for the speaker, please raise your hand and you can ask. PC case. Can you unmute yourself? Yeah.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Hi.
Yeah. Sir, am I audible, sir?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sir, what are the possible questions that the interviewer will ask for the placement? I'm a BE mechanical engineer, sir. I'm going to pass out in 2021. So, could you give some tips about that?
Sorry, I did not get the full of your question. What are the
possible questions an interviewer will ask about in placement?
Okay, so generally they'll be interviewing you about algorithms. They'll be interviewing you about data structures and your knowledge of programming languages. These are the three basic fields where interviewers generally focus nowadays.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Is there anyone else? Okay. Meanwhile, anyone asks any question, there are some questions we received from YouTube. Number one, which are the top developing tools? How we can use the tools effectively? Someone has asked this question.
So it's a good question. I would say it's a very good question. So it again depends on what are you developing. If you are developing a very general purpose program, then using Java, you can use something like Spring and Hibernate, which are very popular nowadays. But then if you are developing for machine learning, then you have to use Python and you have to use scikit-learn, you have to use something like Pandas. So it again depends on what are you trying to develop, and then the tools for that keeps on changing based on what are you trying to develop.
Okay. Another question we received from Prakash. Can you please repeat unlearn to relearn point?
Yeah, so that's a good thing again. So there are things that we learn in the college, which we feel like is how the software industry will be. But when we come to the actual industry, when we actually start working, we realize that some of the things are not really that way. So that's where the unlearn to relearn comes in. The basic Java code that you learn in college might not work well in your company scenario. So then you have to unlearn that part of your knowledge that you have learned in college and relearn it in the company specific way. So I hope that I make myself clear.
Okay. So Sai Pavan, again, you are raising your hand. So do you have any question for the speaker?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Sir, just now I have heard that in the session, what you have told means like a degree, college degree is not. Sir, just give me a minute.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. College degree is not the best to the career, right? So, can you please guide me the better course what we have to learn, like Python and all of this to develop the software? And actually, we are from the degree, sir. We don't have a basic knowledge also on this at all. We just know the C and C++. That's it. We don't know about the Java even. So,
Yes.
is there any chance to start with a career in the software development?
So yeah, so that is the point I wanted to make, that in India, the colleges are very behind in technologies. So what I mean to say is software is changing every 3 years, and colleges are teaching probably technology of 2010 and 2005, which we have seen is very old nowadays. So that is why I pointed you to some sites like Coursera, where you can do courses. There are other sites also. There are free sites also, and there are internet documentation, internet tutorials also, where you can learn all this and try to gain knowledge of all this. So it depends on what you want to learn. Like if you have very basic knowledge of programming with C, C++, it will be very easy to catch on with Java, and you will be able to learn Java in a quick time. Similarly, also, if you want to do machine learning, and if you have basic knowledge of C, C++ and mathematics, you can do machine learning and learn Python in probably a month or two very easily. And I believe those are the things, and there are multiple sites. There is Coursera is one example. There are multiple sites which you can look for in Google, where they provide machine learning tutorials, where they provide Python tutorials, Java tutorials, and you can go through them and learn from them.
To add one more thing, like these Coursera courses and all, they will charge a huge amount, somewhere around 2,000 or 2,500. Anyhow, our OTS will provide all these courses in very minimum cost. Anyhow, once these courses are coming, we'll be updating everything in our website, as well as we'll communicate it through mail also.
Yeah, Sai Pavan, one more thing. We also provide this virtual type of training where you can learn C, C++ using sensors.
Okay.
Yeah, so using different type of sensors and this Arduino, Raspberry Pi, and Node MCU, we provide you virtual learning. That is, there's no need to purchase these components. Without purchasing the components, we'll show you the live training of these sensors and with these devices with a very economical package. So please look into our website details. We'll provide you.
Sure, sir. We'll do that. Thank you.
Anyone else from the participants? Is there anyone else? Okay. TVVS Ajay Kumar. Yeah. Ajay Kumar.
Yes, sir. Sir, can you hear me, sir?
Yeah.
Sir. Hello, sir. Myself, Ajay Kumar, and I am pursuing graduation third year, sir.
Okay.
I had a small doubt, sir. That is, the courses which are the course or the branch which you are studying is totally different from the work that we do. According to that, the courses which we learn like Java, Python, C++, Coursera, something machine language, everything is totally dependent on the work we do to the service, to the job. But the job which we take by the company offers us, and what we do the job on it, the work which we are going to do is totally different from the study what we are studying. How far it is correct, sir?
So it again depends on the company. I'm not refuting your statement. I'm not saying you are 100% wrong, but I am not saying you're 100% right also. So there are places where you might end up in a job where you are doing something which is something very different from what you learned. But there are places where you will do something which is close to what you learned, but still a lot different from what you did in college. That's why that whole unlearn to relearn process came in. That what you learned in college was good. It's a basic stepping stone, but that's not the one thing that will guarantee you your success. That is not the thing you will be working for your company.
Okay, sir. Sir, one more thing, sir. Sir, do these all machine language courses, Java, these all are helpful to our job opportunities in the future for more of us, sir?
Yes, so these are the things that are going on in the current trend. So currently companies are looking for this kind of engineers or engineers with this kind of knowledge. So for the coming next 3 to 4 years, this trend will remain similar. After that, it will be very difficult to predict.
Yes, sir. Sir, can we show practically more than theoretically? Which is better, sir, according to you? So to be practical or to be theory?
Yes, so that's a very good question. Again, engineering, in my understanding, what I feel, engineering is about practical. If you are going for theory, it's science, it's not engineering. Engineering is in the end of the day, at the end of the day, engineering is all about practical. So you need to have a practical knowledge. Your theoretical knowledge is important, but that is not the only thing that is required. Your practical knowledge is the most important thing.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Okay. We received another question in YouTube for app development. We have to use Java or we have to use Kotlin language also?
So app development, this is specific to Android. App development, Android app development, till 3-4 years back, people were using Java. But nowadays, there's a like 50-50 balance of Java and Kotlin. And more people are moving towards Kotlin. So it's difficult to say, but I feel Kotlin will become the primary language for app development in future.
Okay, okay. We are ready to take another 2 more questions. So if anyone is there from Zoom and wants to ask any question to Mr. Soham, so raise your hand and unmute yourself and you can ask. Or else we'll end the session with Indian speech. Pawan,
Yes, sir.
any question do you have?
No, sir, nothing.
Okay, right. So is there anyone else? Okay, right. So Mr.
Yeah.
Kumar, can you please?
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
There is one question from Shravani that, sir, going with a job or going for MS after BTech for a better career. So which one will be the best? Like, shall we go with a job or shall we go and study MS after BTech for a better career?
Okay. So that is generally a very difficult question. If you are able to go for an MS, and it depends on where you are going for an MS. If you are able to go for an MS or an MTech at a good university like an IIT or an NIT, or if you're going to US in a good university, I would definitely suggest go for a higher study, because as more and more time is going through, it's becoming more and more evident that BTech will become like BSc is very much useless nowadays until you have an MSc. So probably 10 years down the line, BTech will become like BSc until you have an MS or an MTech. Your BTech degrees might not be as useful.
Okay. Right. So, Mr. Kumar, you can please proceed.
Hello all, I'm Praveen Kumar. On behalf of OTS team, I'd like to thank Mr. Sohom Majumdar for delivering such a engaging and enlightening notes on career opportunities and various skills required in present software industry. I hope all the participants grab new insights from today's discussion and would make use of all those to build a strong career ahead. OTS is also going to conduct many such webinars, short-term training programs, internship, and workshop in a wide range of areas related to engineering, management studies, diploma, career development, enhancing communication skills, which are just a few of the names. As a part of our schedule, we are also going to conduct a 2-week workshop on C programming from beginners to experts from 17th August to 29th August 2020. So all of you are requested to please visit our website for more details and registration. I finally like to thank all the participants for participating in the webinar and making it is a huge success. Thank you all. Stay safe and good night.
One important announcement for all the participants. One link will be forwarded to all, which will generate certificate. You have to give a feedback regarding this webinar, and automatically the certificate will get generated. This link will be open for another 4 days. So if you do not get the certificate today, try with the same link after 24 hours. So within next 4 days, you will definitely get the certificate. There are many questions we got from many participants. So if you have any questions, you can please leave us in info@ownts.com. I repeat, info@ownts.com. So you can leave your questions. We will communicate those questions with today's speaker, and 100% be sure that we are going to give a reply to you. So once again, I thank one and all, and I thank Soham also to spend valuable time in spite of his busy schedule. He has given us nearly 2 hours, 1.5 hour time. So I thank one and all.
Thank you, OTS, for hosting me and giving me the opportunity to talk to people in this. I feel you guys are doing a great job, and this courses that you are doing through, it will help a lot of people, and you will get a lot of success in future.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you all.
Thank you all.